Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're concluding our first look at the new German battleship branch split, whatever you want to call it. This is Tier 10's Schlieffen. Now, I probably mispronounced the name somewhere along the line until I had at least one or two people correct me in video comments like, hey, dummy, it's a long I or a long E. You're doing it wrong, so sorry. But we got it right now. This is actually called Schlieffen, the same way that the IE in Zieten is pronounced the way it is. So, Schlieffen sits at the top of the line, and if you liked what you saw at Prinz Rupprecht down at Tier 9, I think you're going to have a lot to like here at Tier 10. Schlieffen has a lot of similarities to Tier 9. This is a very comfortable progression. I still look at Zieten at the Tier 8 and go, what is happening with this ship? But that's a transition point for the line, right? You move from kind of almost the World War One, maybe late war era kind of battlecruiser style you see at Tier 6 and Tier 7. Zieten is like some kind of stopgap, and then the Tier 9 and 10 ships look like more something that would have been produced had the Kriegsmarine, actually built ships like this, of this type, into the late 1930s and early 1940s. And Schlieffen and Rupprecht feel very competitive for what they are meant to do, and well, we'll talk through that here as we have a look through the ship. So, starting as we do with survivability, 76,100 hit points. This is not too shabby, guys. Like this is pretty solid. This is not worse than Tier, actually. At Tier 9, Rupprecht was in bad shape in terms of HP, but here at Tier 10, Schlieffen comes out okay. Currently, Burgonia already has less HP than this. Burgonia's been in the game for a while, about 1,000-ish HP less than this. And then forthcoming HMS Incomparable, which we've talked about. There's another video on the channel if you want to check out what a weird ship that is, also has less health than this. So there are a handful of ships that are worse, but basically every other Tier 10 battleship is better. So again, like we're dealing with Rupprecht, this is a weakness of the ship. This is something you're going to have to manage as you play her, and it's something that, to their credit, Wargaming has kind of given you the tools to do if you think through it and you mind your P's and Q's and read the map. And we'll talk about that as we go a little deeper. Torpedo protection, only 23% here. Again, nothing to get excited about. It's not worse than Tier. Incomparable absolutely blows that out of the water. She's going to run away with this crown pretty much every time the conversation comes up. But this is not far behind. So again, battleship armor, when she's in combat, with other high caliber things, her armor will stand up well, but she really, really hates torpedoes. She really, really hates torpedoes. That hasn't changed, and nor will it here. Armor layout. Now, there's a couple of noteworthy changes between the armor layout as we move from Zieten and Rupprecht back up to Schlieffen. One is, certainly from Rupprecht to Schlieffen, we get our 60mm bow strake back. So, yes, I still have kind of the 27mm bow extremities, but I mean, the reality is, you know how when you look at the bow strakes you see on like the Russian heavy cruisers, it's very, very low in the water. It's like that icebreaker bow, right? That sits just above the waterline, literally the reinforced bow meant to break ice and push through nasty water out of those northern ports like Murmansk and so on. This is a much higher bow. Like, I mean, look at this. The 60mm strake is significantly taller than the little 27mm bit up here at the extremities. So, to be honest, it almost feels like calling this ship having a 27mm bow is kind of a lie. It really has a 60mm bow. So, Schlieffen's going to be really, really good when you need to potentially risk a ship to push out something of really big caliber guns. A Musashi, a Yamato, a Vermont, although I can't imagine a Vermont being stationary. This thing could run down a Vermont. We'll get to that in a minute. The bow armor, really nice to see there. The belt armor kind of slowly graduates. We go from 60 mils back to this 100 mil strake here, 100 mil plate top to bottom here, back to the casemate 150 like we saw on Rupprecht. Full belt is 350. The belt then thickens up to 350. Full belt here right at the waterline is 380 before tapering back down to 315 below the waterline. 380 is a pretty good belt, guys. Like, this is a full-on battleship belt. When you look at the armor schemes, you understand why Wargaming has essentially put these as battleships and not cruisers. No way is this cruiser armor. In no way, shape, or form is this cruiser armor or cruiser guns, right? But they're very obviously ships that are going to struggle to tangle with opposing battleships in 1v1 or in most engagements, right? If you find yourself in a 1v1 late in the game, the other guy's beat up, yeah, you've got some really good tools in those kind of fight. But in the early going, this line, basically from top to bottom, is a line of ships that does not want to be picking a fight with something of a heavier weight class, you know, another opposing true battleship early on in a match. So yeah, and then let's have a quick look through. We've been seeing, for example, spaced armor. Yep, remains here. As we can see, a little bit of gap in there. So you've got that spaced armor before that 60mm torpedo bulkhead. One thing that's kind of nice, she has thicker than average kind of armor here over the magazine spaces. You can see it here, literally. I'll put the barbats back down so you can see it, right? So over the magazines, she's a little better protected from, you know, the average AP bomb. I've got 30 mils here, 80 mils here right over the magazines. And then let's put the, you know, I've got another 50 mils on the deck. Is there another? There might even be another. You can see here, there might even be another plate sandwiched right here where this break line is between the 350 and the 150 on the kind of the casemate here. There might even be another hidden plate in here that we can't quite see in the in-game armor viewer. So there could be quite a bit of armor. 80, 50, you're already up to 130. If there's another 50, 60 mils of armor in there, this could be a ship that you can citadel her. You would be able to citadel her through the mid spaces, right, with the engineering spaces. But up forward and back aft, you might struggle with AP bombs to actually citadel this ship. That's nice. Most battleships are not kind of that well protected from those kinds of assaults. Oh, and I guess worth pointing out, as we have in some of the other ships, the citadel, obviously very low in the water, fairly well protected. You've got that space. She's even got a bit of a graduated thwart ship citadel. That's interesting, right? So even if you do try to find a way to punch her in the nose, I mean, you've got some pretty good thwart ship armor here to kind of deflect some of that. That's interesting. But with that 60mm strake on the bow, she's going to be very difficult to punch this ship in the nose. Maneuverability and concealment. Starting off with maneuverability, 34.1 knots. Best in tier. This is one of Schlieffen's best attributes, right? She is unquestionably the king of speed here at tier 10. No other battleship can do this, certainly not base speed. I mean, Republique and Bourgogne can when you push their little fancy speed boost buttons, which, of course, Schlieffen doesn't get, but, I mean, base speed with a flag, this ship's probably going to crank out, what, about 36 and change? Something like that? It's going to be really nice. It's going to be really nice. So, you got to learn, you know, this speed is an advantage. You've got to learn when to use it and when not to use it. In other words, it can get you into trouble early, but can also get you out of trouble in certain situations if you know when to use it. 970 meters, nothing really exciting on the turning circle there. Thoroughly average, and she does have a little bit more overall length, it feels like, than Rupprecht down at tier 9, and so she's a little penalized there in turning circle. 16.1 rudder shift is pretty good, very much above average. Very much above average. But she's still a battleship. She's still a battleship. She's still going to handle like one. Stealth. We saw, Zeton is kind of a standout. She's not very stealthy. The tier 6 Mackinson and tier 7's Prince Heinrich were quite stealthy. Zeton, not really so much. Rupprecht definitely brings that back into the fold, and you see here a little bit more of this coming out of Schlieffen. Nice to see. 16 kilometers on the surface, base detection. Full stealth rig gets this ship down to 12.6. Now, that doesn't sound amazing, but again, if you're hunting cruisers, right, which is this ship's kind of primary role, that's pretty competitive. You will find, obviously, all the light cruisers will outspot you, but some of those light cruisers you can run down. This thing is faster than a Worcester, for example, that kind of thing. So, and then, of course, it is stealthier than most battleships. I say most because Conqueror, Incomparable, and Thunderer all exist and all have better stealth. But beyond that, Schlieffen is the stealthiest tier 10 battleship in World of Warships. Nice to see. And again, like we talked about in the Rupprecht video, that ought, again, with some heads-up play and some cautious movement, especially early, should allow her to pick and choose her engagements as she sees fit as the situation, tactical situation on the board develops. Main battery. Again, we've got Rupprecht's turret arrangement here, 4 double-barreled turrets, 2 forward, 2 aft. However, these are now 420mm guns, just like the ones you find, the upgraded guns you find over on Grosse Kurfürst. So yeah, these are nice guns, guys. You're back to not stuck with a 30-second reload. We're getting a 28-second reload out of these shells now. 214 on the dispersion ellipse. We are sticking with the 1.7 Sigma, and the shell damage there, 12,950. I mean, that's a little worse than Kurfürst's guns. Kurfürst gets 13,500 out of the same shell, so that feels kind of bad. It means that her AP DPM, as we've been seeing the whole way through, not amazing. This is not a ship. These ships, just in general, are not built for sustained combat against opposing battleships, right? You take pot shots, you kite, you look for advantages, and then maybe, if you get a really good health advantage in the late game, you can push in and knock out a battleship. But you're not meant to stay and hang in a fight against a Yamato, right? You're just not built for that. You don't have the firepower really to affect him unless you can work a flank, catch him on a broadside, use your ridiculous torpedoes, we'll talk about that in a minute, and impact him in some other way. But yeah, the guns, again, continue the same kind of wonky-ish dispersion formula with a better dispersion ellipse, but worse sigma inside that ellipse than a typical battleship. So again, as I've said before in other videos, I don't want to comment. I don't really know how that's going to play out. It feels like it might be okay, but it's going to be strange to see. So I'm curious to try it. Shell velocity there, 835 meters per second. A little better than we saw at Rupprecht, but it's going to be pretty comparable. I expect the shell ballistics for all these to be pretty comparable, right? Like, once you get used to firing these guns at tier 8, yes, the caliber changes here at tier 10, but I think, by and large, they're going to feel more or less the same when you fire them. Secondaries. We went from... we're going from 5 of the double-barreled 105s up to 6. So we've got 6 down each. I would say 5. 10 total versus 12 total. 5 down each side for Rupprecht. 6 down each side of the ship here for Schlieffen. And of course, these are dual-purpose batteries. You will see these again when we have the conversation about her AA in a minute. Just like all the other ships, she retains the 150mm guns as casemate guns. Rupprecht, there's an upgrade here. We've got 2. Rupprecht had 2 forward-facing ones, 1 aft-facing one. Schlieffen now gets 2 on each side. 2 forward-facing, 2 aft-facing. So again, you can look and see kind of the firing angles of these are not going to be amazing. You're going to get all the ones you want aft, potentially all the ones you want forward, but off the broadside, you can get everything, right? So yeah, this secondary armament feels like it's going to be pretty good. I like the look of it. Again, you got that 8.3 kilometer base range. Max that out, should go up pretty good, 11 and change, I suspect, by the time you add all the flags and buffs and everything else. This ship will actually end up with a secondary range that is not like, it's almost out its detection radius, its maximum stealth detection radius, right? A full stealth build. Let's do this real quick, just to make sure that I'm not lying to you. A full stealth build should be, where's my secondary? Did I look right at it? I looked right at it. Secondary build here, and then we do this, and then we do, I don't care, it doesn't matter. I need this. Yep, just do that for now. And then we add the flag just for that last little extra bit. Come on, it's this guy here. And then we come back over here for a quick peek. Our secondary battery range is 12.5 kilometers. 12.5 kilometer secondaries on a ship with a 12.3 detection. Or excuse me, 12.6 detection. So literally, if they're spotted, if you're fighting something and they can spot you on the surface, guess what, kids? They're in secondary range. That could be a lot of fun. As we saw with Rupprecht, we have got 4 quad torpedo launchers down each side of the ship. Again, like we've seen on Rupprecht and Zieten at tier 8 and 9, they're kind of out here on the deck, very exposed. These torpedoes are a little different than the ones we've been seeing at tier 8 and 9. These now move up to 13.5 kilometer range. So you're looking at, these are now like Italian torpedo range, right? 13.5 kilometers on 160 second reload. So the reload is worse than we saw at tier 9 for basically the same torpedo. The only difference here, more range. Other than that, it's basically the same torpedo. But they reload slower. Torpedo angles are pretty similar, and of course you saw the gun angles earlier. Torpedo angles are very similar to what we've been looking at, about 30-ish degrees off the bow. Nothing to get excited about on either one of those, really. It's about what you'd expect. You're not going to get amazing kiting angles. You're not going to get amazing pushing angles. It's about 28 or 30 degrees off the bow and stern for all the guns and the torpedoes. So yeah, noteworthy things about this. And this is the first time in the line the torpedoes now outrange the detection bubble. So now you're in a position where you can be kiting and launching torpedoes back in the face of someone who can't even see you, and they actually will have the range. Even if they're, theoretically, even if they're moving away from you, they could potentially like be hits. Yeah, I mean, this is interesting. This is very, very interesting. I see these crazy slow long range torpedoes, right? On Venezia and the Italian cruisers, it kind of they've proven useful. On these ships, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Having the torpedoes gives you that little bit of encouragement, right? To land a knockout punch, push an opposing battleship, shove him out of your way. But the range is the interesting part to me. The range really kind of makes you go, what else can I do with these? More tactical options with that extra range. Got to keep that in mind. A defense. All right, so for the first time, we actually have, hey, all 3 proper rings. All right. Outer bubble made up of the 105mm dual-purpose batteries like we talked about earlier. That outer bubble is actually pretty good, guys. That's really solid. 231 DPS. She's putting up 9 flak puffs, which is pretty good. Well above average, I'd say. A little on the low damage side. 1540 a puff, which isn't amazing, but she's putting up a lot of them. And then 231 on the outer ring. That is not quite best in tier outer ring AA, but it's like we're talking about a couple of points, right? Her outer AA bubble here is really, really, really good. Middle ring there is comprised of the 55mm Garats. This is the same main. This is what gives Hindenburg's middle ring so much punch, such amazingness. Out to 4 kilometers here, but she only has 3 of these mounts. Very, very sag. Basically all turret mounted, none of these on the superstructure, whereas Hindenburg is like covered in these things. Her medium range aura is nasty, nasty, nasty. Unfortunately, the medium range aura here on Schlieffen, not so amazing, only 119 DPS. I mean, better than nothing, but it's not amazing. Inner aura made up of the 30mm guns. I have made a bit of an error in the previous videos. I've been referring to the 30mm guns as her mid-range aura because 3 kilometers on a short-range aura feels insane. But literally, these 30mm guns, these 30mm quad mounts, actually are short-range guns that go out to 3 kilometers. So that's noteworthy. And what it means is that for the other ships, I mean, their A suites are not going to feel amazing simply because they only do have the 2 auras. The inner one may be a longer range than a typical inner aura, right? But it's still just the inner aura. Here, though, by the time you get to 3 kilometers, you're eating all of this. So Schlieffen definitely is not something that I think a tier 10 carrier is going to be really excited about going after. Especially something like a Richthofen that's going to be leaning heavily on those AP bombs potentially to do damage to you. Possibly the torpedoes, but really more on the bombs, right? And we looked at the armor earlier. The armor scheme looks pretty solid against some of those AP bombs. It depends on some of that hidden armor, but we can't see. And then, of course, kind of the incoming angle and so on. So, yeah, interesting. Not a bad ship for AA. She's not Hindenburg, but she's not a slouch either. Last, we got to have a check of the consumables like you do. And, yeah, nothing else new, nothing to get excited about here. Same consumables we've been looking at for a while in this line. Fast damage control team. We've got our standard battleship repair party. And then the high-tier German Hydro out to 6 kilometers on a 2-minute duration. Nothing else to get really excited about. I do wish these ships had aircraft facilities, but I kind of understand from a balancing perspective maybe kind of why you wouldn't bother. So yeah, guys, having looked at the line, I'm genuinely curious to try these ships. I'm really ready for them to let us play these ships on stream so that we can all kind of explore them and learn them together because they're very different, right? They're as well protected as a battleship, but they're very much undergunned for the battleships they're going to be up against in 1v1 engagements. However, they're basically custom made for taking on some of these super heavy cruisers that seem to be running all over the meta right now, right? The Alaskas and Stalingrads of the world. A ship like this should really be able to kind of move in and just punch one of those guys in the face, right? I like that about them. I like that, especially with that speed. 34 knots base? What do you do with the speed flag with this thing? While we're here messing around, let's just see. 36 what? Yeah, 35.8. 35.8. Like, that's for a base speed. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's going to be fun. It's going to get you into trouble, but it's going to be fun. I'm really curious about these ships, guys. I hope you're as interested in this line as I am. That's it, guys. That's our first look series for all the new German battleship splits. Hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. Wash your hands. Be safe. I'll catch you next time.